If you've clicked on this video, then you must like Dracula, or maybe you don't, but here's what you can't argue with. For over 100 years, Dracula has been, and still is, the most iconic vampire of all time. He's been portrayed throughout this time by over 35 different actors across movies, plays and TV series. Dracula, in a way, is literally just another spelling for the word vampire. I know that makes no sense, but maybe you can understand what I mean. So I've compiled my own list of who I believe are the top 10 greatest Dracula portrayals of all time, and I'm going to take you all through them today. Guys, this is just my opinion, by the way. It might differ to yours, but feel free to put your own list in the comment section down below. Let's kick it off with number 10, Louis Jourdan, Count Dracula, 1977. So I only watched this for the first time back in 2020 when I went on a mission to basically watch every Dracula movie I could find, and I have to say I was pleasantly surprised by Louis Jourdan's portrayal, by the way, an actor I'd never heard of up until. The movie is definitely a faithful adaptation to the book, almost to a T, and Jourdan plays a Dracula who seems to embrace the ghoulish, eerie sophistication as a refined intellectual who appears as also a rather quiet yet intimidating individual. He really finds the balance. Jourdan was a well-known actor at the time, a leading actor, and he depicts vampirism as a mark of aristocracy rather than an outright curse. He believes he is above everyone else, that there is nobody like him, and his personality really shows in this TV movie. He was basically a vampire supremacist, which means he was very selective with those who he'd allow into his vampiric circle. In other words, you had to be pretty special or unique for him to turn you into a vampire. It was a completely different take on Dracula, while still adhering to the essential characteristics that actually define the vampire. Coming in at number 9, we have Klaus Kinski from Nosferatu the Vampire. The Vampire spelled with a Y to pay homage to the original short story written in 1819 by John William Polidori. I absolutely loved this movie. It was by far one of the best Dracula movies I've ever seen, and Klaus gives a really strong, penetrating performance as his vampirism is played upon as a plague, like an infectious disease that's passed through a vampire bite. This Dracula is eerie, he's creepy. It's like Kinski is trying to make the audience uncomfortable, but makes them enjoy it at the same time, for the purpose of the movie. He's stuck in a dark, dandy castle. His entire life is like a curse, and despite the title movie being called Nosferatu, his name in the film is Dracula. It's like he takes Max Schreck's character from the original Nosferatu and completely enhances it, bringing it into the modern age, with the addition of better filming equipment, of course. One of the best Draculas of all time, hands down. Following on at number 8, we have Leslie Nielsen from Dracula Dead and Loving It. Okay, some of you might be thinking, what the hell is Leslie Nielsen doing on a list of the greatest Draculas of all time? Especially as Dracula Dead and Loving It is a comedy movie, but I have nothing but happy, pleasant memories of growing up watching this movie, and to see a comedic portrayal of Dracula was really refreshing, and Nielsen hit the spot with so many of his jokes, including his rivalry with Van Helsing, played by director Mel Brooks. There's a really funny scene where Dracula's hair is based on the Gary Oldman version, but it's actually his hat, and the guy doesn't know what he's talking about when Dracula is actually asking him to take his hat. It's witty, it's funny, you'll laugh the whole time. In my opinion, it's an iconic portrayal of Dracula that will always stick with me, and I know a lot of other people too. It deserves a place on this list. Do any of you remember this movie? Let me know down below. Next up at number 7, we have Bill Skarsgård from the 2024 adaptation of Nosferatu. And I have to say, this movie really delivered for me. It was terrifying, something you don't want to watch by yourself with the lights off. And Skarsgård's Count Orlok did not fall short, as he played to the lighting and the shadows so well. The Count was vicious, extremely feral, and completely red-blooded. Again, like Kinski, an enhancement on the Silent Era's original take on the vampire. Orlok has a supremacist view and sees himself as the ultimate being of existence, using his mind control to lure his victims with relative ease. I know it's quite rare and probably unusual to place such a recent Dracula portrayal on the list of the greatest Draculas of all time, but the performance speaks for itself. Additionally, although there are older, more recognised movies, a lot of the Dracula portrayals are not so good and rather cringy, so it wasn't exactly a struggle for Skarsgård to make this list. If you haven't seen this movie, guys, please watch it. Nosferatu, amazing. Following on at number 6, we have, in my opinion, one of the most underrated Draculas to come to the TV screen, Jonathan Rhys-Meyers' 2013 Dracula series. At the time, I was completely hooked on it and would be patiently waiting for the next episode to drop each week to find out if Dracula was eventually going to be able to walk in the sun without burning. He was more of a sophisticated, modernised Dracula that wasn't blinded by an egotistical sense of power. He's more so the protagonist in the series rather than the antagonist, as he seeks to bring down the Order of the Dragon, a group of elites who have been manipulating and controlling society for centuries. The show also deals with him struggling to comprehend his love for Mina. Great Dracula, great show, definitely recommend to watch. Coming in at number 5, we have yet again another underrated but fantastic 3-part miniseries, Dracula, produced by the BBC in 2020. Dracula stars Claes Bang, and his portrayal is absolutely incredible. Now, I have to admit, when I first seen it advertised on Netflix, I wasn't overly keen on watching it, but I gave it a shot and it's one of the best Dracula portrayals I've ever seen, especially the use of camera work, the angles, the up-close shots, the intelligence and elegance of Dracula, who pays homage to the character by using his charm and lure to reel victims in, but also show his vicious side too, especially that opening scene with the nun. It was the perfect level of horror. And this Dracula plays on the stereotypical stigma that actually surrounds his legend in the media and current pop culture, like he's aware of his reputation, and he even mocks the famous "I want to suck your blood" cliche so widely associated with Dracula. Definitely deserves a place on this list. If you haven't watched it on Netflix, then I'd highly suggest checking it out. Coming in at number 4, it's the vampire that you might have expected to be number 1. But the truth is, it's not my favourite Dracula portrayal, but that doesn't mean it can't rank higher in someone else's opinion. The silent film is absolutely iconic and has cemented its legacy in the vampire genre due to Nosferatu, or Count Orlok, being the first ever on-screen portrayal of the Count. Max Schreck's brilliance in this movie is the fact that there was no sound, which means the visuals had to be extremely impactful, and as we all know, they were and still are. Orlok plays on the lighting, he plays on the darkness, he plays on the shadows so excellent in this movie. He moves his body in such ways, he contorts it, it completely creeps you out. One of the most iconic and greatest vampires of all time. At number 3, we have one of the most iconic Draculas to ever appear on screen, Bela Lugosi. This guy is the diamond of Draculas. It all started with him. The thick Eastern European accent, the slick back hair, the tuxedo. Lugosi takes the role so seriously that sometimes it can appear quite awkward during certain scenes, especially Lugosi's mind control attempt on Van Helsing and the overdramatic reaction to the sight of the crucifix. However, the movie's lack of music in most scenes did increase the overall tension in certain other scenes, and Lugosi's delivery is almost mesmerizing. In saying that, Todd Browning's Dracula changed the face of the horror scene in US cinema forever, with Lugosi himself becoming a revelation as Dracula. It's kind of funny when I think of Bela Lugosi, because when I first came across him, it was in that Ed D. Wood movie that starred Johnny Depp, and then I researched him and actually watched the movie. But you know, he defined the concept of how the vampire was perceived for the next 100 years. Lugosi even later stated that the role typecasted him and was fatally impactful when it came to him landing different roles. So coming in at number 2, following Lugosi, we have Christopher Lee, who portrayed the Count in the 1958 Hammer horror film. Now, I first seen Christopher Lee as Count Dooku in Star Wars when I was a kid before discovering his incredible collection of work, with the most impactful being his portrayal of Dracula. Lee brought a more sexualized approach to the role, having more than one encounter with several different women like Lucy and Mina during the course of the film, and as you can imagine, caused absolute public outrage for the time it was released in 1958. But the box office didn't lie, and the success of the movie actually saved Universal from going bankrupt and ceasing as a company. Can you imagine Universal not being around today? Lee completely made the role his own, with his quick movements and very active approach to the physical requirements, a far distance from Lugosi's calm and relaxed Dracula, revitalizing the vampire. So guys, coming in at number 1, and I must state, in my opinion, the greatest Dracula of all time, Gary Oldman. And a big part of that is the different approach he takes in the different variations of the vampire's appearance. He begins the movie as the old, frail count who has been living out his immortal life in his castle. Depressed, he had the iconic hairstyle, the long robes, the elongated fingers, and he seems a bit unhinged, unstable, like really creepy. And it's kind of like, okay, this guy's really weird. And then he switches. He arrives in London as this handsome, super attractive, well-dressed, overly confident young count who's abruptly seductive. Oldman humanizes Dracula because the vampire's purpose is to reclaim his lost love. He rejected God in every manner after fighting so many battles in his name, and still ended up losing his wife afterwards. He's conflicted between the monster he has become and the part of him that is still good deep down. He allows himself to die in the end in order to finally free himself from so many years of pain. The acting is fantastic, the storyline is based on the novel, and I enjoyed the movie thoroughly enough to get over Keanu Reeves' dreadful English accent. There you have it guys, that is my top 10 greatest Draculas of all time. I know there's gonna be many of you that will have your own opinions on this list, so instead of being angry at me, give me your own list down below. I'll chat to you all very soon.